All right, Pony. So my name is Glenn Hunter, and I'm the Special Assistant to the Governor for Broadband Policy and Development in the CNMI. I head a broadband policy and development office that was stood up about almost 2 years to the date now. When the governor took office a few months after, he um, he decided he wanted to put a focus in on uh, um, standing up a digital economy out here, and part of that is ensuring that the proper infrastructure is in place, proper foundation to build a robust digital economy out here, to diversify our economy and add another pillar. And so with that, he went ahead and decided to put extreme focus on exactly that process. And in doing so, what he opted to do was he stood up a broadband policy and development office with the sole intent of seeking out federal funding. So they made sure that the new office is solely federally funded. So we're 100% federally funded in all aspects of our operation. And then the goal of the office is to expand on that funding by looking for other sources, whether they be federal funding sources or private investment, to put towards broadband development. It also gave us a directive to work on the policies involved to ensure that every resident had access to broadband technology and knew how to use it. So digital literacy is a big part of our office's focus, as well as cybersecurity and different aspects on that front. And so we stood the office up about 2 years ago. I took the reins and took the directive from the governor with his full support. We fall right under the office of the governor, so we're a branch of the governor's office, and went ahead and started on the mission of trying to secure funding. So right out of the gate, we were able to, in the first year, we were able to secure, um, I want to say it was about $81 million for infrastructure funding from the federal government. And that was part of a program called BEAD. We were initially slated to get 25 million, but we were able to work with the federal government on increasing that amount to 81 million. So we have that funding available. That funding helps fund our office, as well as we'll be rolling out a fiber to the home to every single home and business in the CNMI. We're opening up that sub-grant portal. We're just going to pass through the funds directly to uh, people that are capable of providing broadband service to run fiber to each home and business in all three of the main islands, Saipan, Tinian, and Rota. We also, so that takes care of, from when we talk about infrastructure for developing a digital economy on. One of the main concerns is your terrestrial network and ensuring that everybody has access to affordable, high-speed broadband connectivity. And so with this funding and this program called the BEAD, we intend within the next 3 to 4 years run underground climate hardened fiber to every home and business in the CNMI. So that takes care of the terrestrial side. All three islands, all three businesses will have access to pick up a phone and get high speed, end-to-end, climate hardened underground broadband internet access. So that's the first one of the first focuses of the office. The other one that we were acutely aware of is that the way the CNMI is set up when it comes to the internet is we're solely reliant on Guam for our connectivity. Anytime we get online, like I'm online with the Zoom to you, my transmission will go through what I call extension cords of fiber cables that connect us to Guam, which then connects us to the West Coast or wherever it might be, wherever that big IXP or ICT facility is that hosts the Zoom application. And so because of that, there are a few problems that were glaring when we were looking at this, and so the governor wanted us to address that as well. And one of the problems is it's a single point of failure. We all know with geopolitics in the region, we all know with the history of storms and earthquakes and natural disasters that could befall us here, that there is a very, a very big risk of putting all your eggs in one of these islands' baskets as far as connectivity is concerned. And so what we were looking for is risk mitigation. And so from a national security standpoint and just an overall health and welfare of our community, especially since we've recently in about 2015 experienced a complete disconnection from the internet out here in the CNMI. I don't know if you guys were here, but we went almost a month being cut off completely from the internet. And it affected our land communications, affected all of our e-commerce, affected health and education. And the way, at that time, the way the federal government addressed that issue was they simply put another line connecting us to Guam, right? So now we had the Marianas Guam cable. They went ahead and they helped out with ensuring that there was an ATISA cable. So now we have two of those connections to Guam. While that was good in our mind, it still leaves that single point of failure. We're going through a time when there's extreme concern with geopolitics over things that could befall any of these islands. And if something catastrophic happened in Guam, we would lose our connectivity here in the CNMI. And we didn't feel that that was safe for our CNMI or safe for the nation. And so our governor wrote a letter to the Secretary of State, Blinken at the time, and let him know that we have a serious situation out here in the CNMI that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. And it's a dire need for direct landings of trans-Pacific cables so that way we have cables that land directly in the CNMI. So we're no longer fully reliant on our neighbor down south, which is a completely separate government and a completely separate place than the CNMI. So with that being said, that started us down a road of reaching out for partners, looking for people that might be able to make this come to fruition. And we also were relying heavily on the federal government to advocate for this process. And so that's what we were doing for the last for the first year. We were really heavily invested as an office. I was heavily invested in really getting to know. I'm already familiar a lot with the submarine. Give me 1 sec. Yeah, give me 1 second. Okay, give me 1 second. Sorry about that. And so we were heavily involved in and focused in on working on crucial partnerships to make this come to fruition. And so it involved us going to submarine network conferences, reaching out to different partners in this sphere. I already had quite a bit of connections with different submarine cable owners and operators from my past experience. And so I was able to reach out to people like Telin, who does the CUS cable that currently lands in Guam and Palau and Yap and throughout the Pacific. And I was able to reach out to contacts that I had with RTI, contacts I had with different submarine cable operators, to see if there was anything on the horizon, anything that might be coming up. I was aware that Google, as a hyperscaler, had just started. The hyperscalers are like Google, AWS, Meta, Microsoft, all of these large, Cloudflare, all of these large people that are constantly utilizing a lot of data and transferring a lot of data. Normally, we're reliant on conglomerates of other private companies to do the infrastructure of the submarine cables, and then they would lease the space on it with IRUs for their use. There was a trend that was just starting to happen. It was roughly around 5 or 6 years ago, maybe a little before, where they just decided they had the financial capability, they had the resources. Why were they entering into these leases with other operators when they could do it themselves? And so one of the first hyperscale owned cable was a joint partnership between Meta and Google. And they decided they were going to connect the West Coast to Asia using a cable called Echo. And they went into that deal and they ran the cable from the West Coast all the way to Asia. And as it passed by Guam, it landed twice in Guam and it landed in Palau on the way. They land in the middle of the Pacific in some of these islands to regenerate their signal because it's quite a long distance. And it's also for repairs and for other purposes. It's just helpful that they have a link somewhere along the line. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's so interesting. They landed twice in Guam. It's too bad one of those didn't come to the CNMI. I missed the boat on that for sure. And I knew another cable called Bifrost, which was coming by the area, was coming through, but I missed that window as well. And then I talked with a lot of submarine consultants in the area that were currently working in Palau and in New Zealand and all over the Pacific. And I asked them what was on, what was coming up soon in this Pacific area. And at the time, they said there was a what they were referring to as a secure triangle of communication between Guam, Hawaii, and American Samoa. So they were going to connect submarine cables to connect these three U.S. interests to ensure that they had a secure triangle of communication. I was like, that's pretty cool. Maybe we can get a branching unit from the one that goes up from American Samoa or one that comes over from Hawaii. And so I was hell bent on that being maybe a quick fix to our situation that we were in. At least it would provide us with redundancy, reliability, and so I kind of went single-minded into that because the timing was working. It was in the feasibility stage. The U.S. government had through USTDA had paid a company to do a feasibility study on this cable network system and what would be needed. And so we started down that track. Cut to today, what ended up happening is CPC ended up morphing into a much larger subsea network called the Pacific Connect Initiative, and they got Google involved. They decided, well, Google was involved. Google's the sole owner of the Pacific Connect Initiative subsea system connecting all Pacific islands. That's the goal, to make sure that every island in the Pacific is directly connected to this subsea system. So it's a started out, I think the initial estimates was maybe it'd be a $1 to $2 billion project. Now I think it's up to a $4 to $6 billion investment. So it's a rather large investment. The Pacific Connect Initiative now has the Central Pacific Connect Initiative, the North Pacific Connect Initiative, which we're a part of, and the South Pacific Connect Initiative, which connects all the way down to Australia, and then also does all the way down to like other areas down there. And so this entire network was masterminded by Google and was had full advocacy of the federal government to, hey, yeah, you guys should do this. This is really great for communications. This will bring the Pacific Islands up to, another level when it comes to connectivity. So that being said, I was aware that they had within the system, they have what they call nodes. And in the beginning, there were three nodes, just like the secure triangle. There were three nodes: French Polynesia, Fiji, and Guam. And so those three nodes created a secure triangle of communication that every other Pacific island would just branch off onto, right? Each of those nodes had two landings and two facilities for redundancy. So that if there was a near shore break in one of the cables, they were highly redundant. They would just fall back to the second connection. So we were given a chance to at this stage discuss with Google the possibility of maybe moving one of the Guam split nodes and one of the Guam split landings to the CNMI. After a lot of back and forth and negotiation, a lot of assistance from other people in the area, we were able to get them to seriously consider it. And long story short, they were able to agree to it. And so that's where we stand today. That system now has 4 nodes. They included Hawaii. So it's a box, goes from Hawaii to Guam and, well, from Hawaii to the Marianas, because it split lands. Every single cable on this network split lands between Guam and the CNMI. And then it has Fiji and French Polynesia. So it creates a box of redundancy. If any of these connections go down, you've got the other connections to kind of self-heal and keep connected. And then internally, it has a cross. So it goes from Guam to French Polynesia, and then from Hawaii down to Fiji, or vice versa, and it creates a cross. So you got a box and a cross. So it's extremely redundant and reliable subsea network system. And for the CNMI, what that means to us is we'll have a direct connection from the CNMI to Hawaii, a direct connection from the CNMI to the West Coast, a direct connection from the CNMI to Japan, a direct connection from the CNMI to Taiwan, and a direct connection from the CNMI to the Philippines, and then another direct connection down to Fiji, French Polynesia, to Chile or South America, and the other one goes straight through to Australia. And so we're going to go from having no trans-Pacific cable landings in the CNMI to within 3 years having 4 direct land in the Pacific, and every point the closest continents or nations within that border of the Pacific. So it takes us from almost nothing to an extreme leap ahead to being a digital hub in the Pacific when it comes to connectivity on a global scale. Google will also, because we're going to be the split node requires a brain, an ICT facility at a higher grade level, because this would become the edge of their subsea system. And so each of those nodes, the four nodes, have to have mirrored data for their applications, their content, and all of that. So we would have one situated right here in the CNMI with Google Cloud Services. So GCP will be located on that. And then the ICT facility will have available modules to allow other hyperscalers to co-locate there. And so the hope is we'll be able to move the edge of the internet, which is now primarily in the west coast of the United States, to Marianas. So any of our applications, any of our, the larger scaled applications, content, all of that will be right, like just miles away from the computer that you're on connecting to it. So what that means is we don't only get higher speeds and better reliability, but we also address a large concern which is a concern for all of the Pacific, and that's latency. And so because the edge is moving closer to us, we're reducing the latency to something that in the future will be. Right now, everybody's after speed, 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 speed. The truth is, in the future, latency is going to be a bigger concern. It already is, because a lot of these things like remote controlled cars, remote surgery, augmented reality, stuff like that, that requires on instantaneous communication with the server is extremely affected by latency. And so if I'm a doctor and I'm in a lab and I'm using robotic, I'm in California, but there's an operating table here with somebody on the bench, the latency becomes extremely important when I'm trying to control robotic devices to maybe work on an organ or something like that. And so, or if I'm trying to control a car with uh, um, like remote geo stuff to control a car that's moving on a roadway, every little microsecond really, really matters. And so they would always say that if your latency is more than 100 milliseconds, it's considered high latency, and it's not good for any of those types of applications. And so the goal we have at a broadband office here and as a community is to how are we going to get our latency below 100 milliseconds. And the only way to do that, we can't get to the internet faster because light has a speed limit. And so if we can't get there faster, what we really focused in on was how do we move the edge of the internet closer? And that's what this will solve as well. And so in a nutshell, that's the infrastructure that has now been not only funding secured, planning developed, so fully planned. In the last 2 years, we were able to fully fund, fully plan, and now in the process of executing, so that within 3 to 4 years, we'll have an underground fiber to the home network connecting every home and business in the CNMI, and we'll have 4 major trans-Pacific cable landing, and we'll have the edge of the internet ICT facility developed in the CNMI. So in 4 years, this place will have all the infrastructure necessary to stand up a robust digital economy out here, and to not just do the bare minimum, but to excel and present ourselves to the world as in the same light somewhere like Singapore does. So Singapore is kind of one of those areas now, a digital hub. They did the same thing. They invested a lot into infrastructure. They made sure they had all the trans-Pacific cables landing there so they could aggregate the signals. They had reliability. They had the Singaporean government is one of a stable government. And so that they were able to leverage to really become a digital hub in this area. We'll now be able to emulate them. And a couple of the differences that we'll be able to leverage on our side. Number one is we're US soil. So for a lot of people, when it comes to data storage, when it comes to FinCEN stuff, when it comes to oversight, from that perspective, that's a huge advantage, because if you're looking at storing, critical data, whether it's health, financial, educational, personal, government data, being US soil is really a big check mark, right? The other thing that we'll be able to leverage is our proximity. We're located, a lot of people think we're so far from everything. The truth is we're so close to Asia. So when you look at places like, let's take Taiwan, for example, right now, they're also involved in some really high level geopolitical issues. And so from a from a Taiwanese perspective, security of their data is kind of paramount, right? Because they never know what might happen, just like we in the Pacific never know what might happen. Therefore, protecting their data, storing their data, ensuring their data is safe, whether that's financial, government, personal, health, whatever, ensuring that critical data is safe, I think is high in their mind. And so we can now offer, why don't you come and set up a facility here, a data center facility, something like that. We're directly connected to you via Trans-Pacific cable, and we're US soil. You don't even need a local instance in Taiwan at that point. They could rely solely on all their data being stored in the CNMI, and they just using cloud services to connect to it because latency is no longer an issue. So we become extremely attractive on that front because we're even closer than Singapore. We're even closer than Philippines. And so all of those things become a bigger factor, right? Um, and then so now what we'll end up doing is we'll be able to leverage all of this infrastructure to start making those requests. You also mentioned earlier, Taiwan just made a major commitment to things like chip manufacturing in the States. And that's one way they can definitely avoid tariffs. If they build and manufacture chips or other products within the United States, that bypasses the tariff because they're building here and it's made in America. We can present a new opportunity for them where we're physically closer to Taiwan than the mainland US. We're connected digitally and we have a better tax system than most of the mainland US. We have similar culture. So there's a lot of things that really, I think, could be that we could leverage and benefit when we look on trade missions to places like Taiwan to tell them, hey, you might want to consider setting up a chip manufacturing center here, since a lot of that's done robotically anyway. It's not heavy labor intensive anymore. It could be conceivably a light ask to them rather than before it would have been a heavy one. And so those are something we can look at too, light manufacturing of different products and goods. Once we have that robust infrastructure, we can do so many things, call centers, digital development centers like software and application development. We can do content development centers. We can do a hub for digital nomads, whether they're from the mainland or whether they're from any part of the world. If they set up shop here on US soil, they can make this their hub of whatever business sustains them and then move from here through Asia so easily for their nomadic adventures. And so it becomes, from here to Korea's sometimes less than $200 to get that trip. And then from Korea to the rest of the world, sub $500 to Europe. And so this becomes a very attractive, because of our tax structure, a very attractive place for digital nomads to call home. And so that's another sector of the market we can do. And the list goes on and on. And so once that infrastructure is in place, all these different related digital enterprises become practical. Right now, they might be fantastic. At that point, they would be practical and they would be doable. And this would be actually a rich area for them a fertile ground for them to truly consider. And so that's been the role of this office. That's what I've been doing with the help of so many people, with the direction of our governor and the help and resources given to us by both the federal government, the local government, the private enterprises, the existing carriers, the people like Google, the people with the larger vision, the passion. And so it's just been really great to see all of this coalesce and come together. And it's been something that I'm extremely blessed to be on the front seat at this show and watching it all happen before me. And so it'll be refreshing 4 or 5 years from now to look back and see what has become possible. A lot of people in the past would have said, as we move forward, in the early stages of this, there was a lot of negativity, there was a lot of doubt, there was a lot of that's not even possible. There's no business case for this. You're out of your mind. You're crazy. I always was, I would always turn to a quote that was told to me, which is, yeah, it's impossible. Therefore, it might take a little bit longer. And that's kind of what's been my driving force. And I've just kind of always kept that the only person that you always get to know when you don't ask, and the only person that can stop you is you not trying. And so that's been the mentality, and that's been the motto of this office. And I think we've done pretty well so far. And we're really hopeful that this all comes to fruition. We have the subgrant opportunities opening up at the end of this month for the fiber to the home project. And the Google project is cables are already in the water, agreements already signed. And so hopefully prior to the end of this year, around August through December, we'll have the first cable landing in the CNMI. So it's that near, it's just a few months away. And then shortly after the first quarter of next year, we'll have the second cable. And then we have two more after that. And so where if you punch in like submarine cable map, oh, I can do it right now really quick. I don't know how much time you guys have, so stop me if I'm over.
Oh yeah, no, you're fine. Yeah.
Fine. Okay, give me 1 sec. Let me share something really quick because it's pretty cool to look at. I talk about it, but it's better maybe sometimes visually, right?
Yep.
Give me 1 second. Let me show you a map of, in the beginning of this whole process, we weren't even on the submarine cable map of the world. It's a real-time view of all the existing submarine cables and all the planned submarine cables. Am I able to share a screen? Oh yeah, there it is. Share. And then let me just share this screen with you. It's one of the things that motivates me a little bit. Can you see a submarine cable screen on your screen right now?
Yep, I can.
Okay, so this is a map of the Pacific and it shows everything. If you search by northern Mariana Islands, you can choose connected to the Northern Marianas Islands. And as you'll see here now, you
Oh
see the big
wow.
box I was talking about. And
Yep.
this is one cross. There's actually another cross that for some reason is not showing gray yet. Maybe they're still working on some permitting or something like that. But this is the box cross that it's the most stable type of network connectivity you can have for reliance and reliability. And so this will be the box cross. And then on this cable, it doesn't show now, but all the Pacific Islands in this area will connect somehow to one of these cables. So they'll have branching units from each of these, from one of these cables to each of the Pacific Islands within this area. And so this network right here, this one that I'm kind of flipping between, is the Pacific Connect initiative. So it goes from the West Coast, goes from Hawaii, it goes from Taiwan, Taiwan, it goes from Philippines, it goes from Japan, it goes from Fiji, it goes from French Polynesia, all the way to Chile, and then down here, this one's also not showing, but this will connect to Australia as well. So what'll end up happening is this is us over here. Every single cable on this network split lands within to Guam and to the CNMI. So all of these are split. So you see this is a split here, that's a split there, that's a split there, that's a split there, and there's a split there. These are all split landing. So every single cable is fully redundant between the two, Guam and the CNMI. And so this is the vision we had has become a reality. And if you look over here on this side of the screen, it'll show you the Northern Marianas name, and it'll show you that these cables, what they call ready for service, is 2026. PROA is coming down from Japan, 2026. TPU is the Taiwan, Philippine, US line. That is at the end of this year in 2025. And then the last one, Halai, that's coming up from French Polynesia will be 2027. And then they'll also add one other cable, like I said, that's going to cross. But so this is where we stand. We went from having nearly no presence in the CNMI to having extreme connectivity. And so I think now for the world, as we move forward, any cable that comes through the Pacific, we will now have a really, in the past, when I would ask, like say, like I said earlier, like whether it's Telin, for instance, or it's RTI, if I ask them, hey, would you consider landing a cable that you have going across the Pacific in the CNMI? It would seem nonsensical, right? Like that doesn't make any sense. You have no infrastructure, there's no reason for it. But now going forward, because we're on the map and because Google has taken that jump and that leap, we now become, Guam has already about 14 to 16 submarine cables. They're really inundated with submarine cable landings. We now become an alternative regeneration point for every cable in the future that passes through these waters. And so we can conceivably see ourselves growing with that market alone just for regeneration services. And every time they stop to regen, there's an opportunity to build not just a landing station, but a data center as well. And then there's an opportunity for us to reach out to Equinix and all these different data center providers to come out here and set up shop and do data centers as well. So basically, that's everything on my side. I know it was extensive, but I just wanted to give you kind of an overview of what the office is doing, what we've done, and where we're at. And that's kind of, in a nutshell, that's everything, even though it was a large nutshell.
Wow, this is like a very big like achievement. First of all, I just really want to say like congratulations. Like this is like um huge work for the CNMI. But I do have a question for like all these like cables and data centers. Um, so like with all like these data, like you said that there's gonna be like data center being created for like all these like wire and stuff. So like how is the CNMIs, especially Saipan, Tinian, and Rhoda, I know they all rely on five diesel power generator. How is the power system gonna adapt to all like these new power needs for like these centers, like all these data, these wires?
Got it. Yeah. So that's a common, like major point for all, like globally, is the power use for data centers. It's already pretty high, but now with the advent, I didn't talk to you earlier, but with the advent of AI, that's also adding a whole new complex, like to this data center development and the future forecasting of not just the data centers that will be needed to do all this high-end AI computing that's exponentially increasing, but the power that's needed to generate this AI data. So those two things are a major point that globally all the players in this field are looking at. How do you solve this, right? Like how do you ensure, because every graph will show like this is the amount of data centers and the amount of power they're using. And then in the next 5 years, it's like a crazy jump to the amount of data centers that are going to be required, or the capacity, and the power capacity that's needed is like astronomical. Like everybody's like, holy Christ, what are we going to do? So one of the things when we were in the early stages with Google on this, on setting up the ICT center, their main concern was having power, like, just having power. Like you're saying, we got to make sure that if we set up this facility, we have access to the power needed to power this facility. The one good thing is, and one of the reasons why we chose Tinian for the landing of all these cables, is Tinian is the one island out here in the Pacific that had an overcapacity of diesel generated power. So the island at the time when we were talking to them, there was the residential community used about 1.5 megawatts of power. And there was a facility called a Voice of America radio station out there that was using another 1.5 megawatts of power. And so altogether, that island used about 3 megawatts of power. The generation capacity on Tinian, because it was built a little while ago, in the future for casinos, military buildup, whatever it might be, they have a 20 megawatt generation capacity. So there was extreme overcapacity in Tinian. And so that right away took availability of power out of the concern. So we have an overcapacity in Tinian of power, diesel generated power. And so that's why Tinian is still, this ICT facility is scalable. Initially, it'll be about a 5 megawatt, so fairly low load of power when it comes to data centers, but it has modules to expand to, I want to say 3 times that size or 4 times that size. So it's still within the capacity that they have. The other thing that we have going for us in the CNMI when it comes to power is, one thing that Tinian has a lot of is land. And so one of the areas that they're looking at for the facility that the first facility they're building at is maybe making it primarily solar powered. So the primary source of power to be a solar farm. And so roughly, constructing about a 20 megawatt solar farm on Tinian is feasible because they have access to available land to do it. Whereas other places like cities or something, sometimes that becomes difficult to ask. And so that's one thing. So on the power side, that would be what we would be looking for, people that are looking to come in with alternative energy ideas and then falling back on the diesel as a backup just because of the cost part of it. Um, and then other people, like we've seen some technologies that use hybrids of wind, solar, and battery to create the power necessary for data centers. And then there is, in the far off future, after, good research and more discussion, some of the data centers now are coming with SMRs, the small modular reactors that'll, power the generator just built into the data center, perhaps. So we can start exploring that far down the road. At this stage, it's still too early, and that's not something I don't think our government wants to start really delving into yet. But so on the power side, that's does that help answer that question?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it does. And then, so like now that power is answered, what about like, what kind of industries will like this? Oh, I just realized we have a minute left for the Zoom until like it like automatically closes. Um,
Do you want
maybe,
to send another link once it closes?
yeah, sure. But would
Okay.
it be possible if for you for Saipan time is 11 p.m. because currently I'm working a shift, so I gotta close down the library and then get everything ready and head back to my dorm. Is that fine with you?
Why don't you digest what we talked about today, and then you can just schedule another call and we can just answer questions based on that. You can review the video, you can talk with James, and you can put together a list of any questions or concerns you had, and I can just answer them that way, either on video form or you can even shoot them over. But yeah, just shoot me a message and I'll let you know.
Yeah.
And anytime I have free time that lines up with you, I'm open to discussing.
Oh, that sounds great. Thank you so much.
All right, Pony, you got my
Hmm.
email. Feel free to use the email because sometimes I don't
Hmm.
get the LinkedIn messages.
Hmm.
But I sent you my email, right?
Yeah, you did. Hmm.
Okay. It's glenn.hunter@gov.mp.
Yep, got it. Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
Thanks, you
Thank you so
guys.
much
Thanks,
for your
James.
time. Thank you so
Thanks,
much for
Pony.
your time.
You guys take care. No
You
problem.
too. Goodbye. Have a great day.